Tanya decided to get married right after graduating from high school, much to her mother's dismay. Despite her mother's protests and warnings to live life first, Tanya's love for Sergei compelled her to follow her heart. Eventually, her mother relented, on the condition that Tanya still pursue her education. Tanya enrolled in college to study accounting, all while preparing for her wedding to Sergei in the last warm days of September. Moving into Sergei's apartment with her mother-in-law, Tanya was faced with the challenges of balancing marriage, studying, and navigating her relationship with her new family. Her mother-in-law was demanding, constantly reminding her of household duties and criticizing her efforts. Tanya silently endured the nagging, feeling overwhelmed by the new responsibilities and expectations placed upon her. Despite the hardships, Tanya kept her struggles to herself, choosing not to burden her own mother with complaints. She realized that her hasty decision to marry early had consequences she now had to accept and navigate on her own. Sergei, who used to be tender and affectionate before the wedding, underwent a sudden change. He would come home from work, have dinner, and then sit down in front of the TV, showing no praise or affection towards his parents. In November, he was called to serve in the army, leaving Tanya all alone. Tanya decided to inform her mother-in-law that she would be moving in with her own mother. However, her mother-in-law objected, stating that a wife should live with her husband, wait for him, and help his parents. Despite her mother-in-law's disapproval, Tanya insisted on her decision and went to live with her mother. It was during this time that Tanya discovered she was pregnant. Her mother would frequently blame her daughter for ruining her own life. Tanya endured the criticism silently. When Sergei returned from the army, their daughter Nastenka was already 1.5 years old. She had started walking and talking. It was fortunate that Nastenka resembled her father, as this left no doubt about the paternity of the child. Tanya, however, refused to return to Sergei's parents due to her previous negative experiences. She persuaded Sergei to live with her mother instead, and their daughter grew attached to her grandmother. Despite the small and cramped living conditions, Sergei missed his wife and daughter dearly and was willing to do anything for their happiness. He approached his boss at work and managed to secure a promise of an apartment, although they were temporarily offered a room in a dormitory. Although the room was spacious and had a shared kitchen, they still had to use the communal shower. However, Tanya could also use her mother's place for that purpose, although they would be without their own privacy. Life slowly began to improve. Their lovely daughter was happy, Sergei returned, and Tanya completed her college education. They found happiness in their situation, even if it meant sacrificing going out with friends or having a carefree youth. Their daughter started attending kindergarten, and Tanya's mother, who was still young and not close to retirement, would often take care of her on weekends, giving the young couple an opportunity to go to the movies or do other activities together. Tanya had no regrets about her decision. On the contrary, she believed that marrying Sergei was the right choice. He was a respectable, hard-working man who did not drink excessively. Even Varika from the store had her eyes on him the moment they met on the street. And she wasn't the only one. If Tanya had listened to her mother's advice, she would have ended up without a husband. They never knew what the alternative would have been like. However, life is not always smooth. Sergei bought an old car, but ended up spending more time fixing it than driving it. All the money went to expensive repairs and spare parts, and Tanya was upset. They were planning to move into a new apartment, and they needed money for furniture. Tanya convinced Sergei to sell the car. The couple finally moved into the new apartment, which had the invigorating smell of fresh paint. Tanya was happily figuring out how to arrange the furniture and what to buy first, while Sergei was buying another car. Despite the fact that his parents helped with the finances, he still had to take out a loan. Couldn't you have waited before buying another car? Complains Tanya. Complains Tanya. Complains Tanya. Temporary debts can turn into long-term burdens. "Our daughter is growing up, and we need to be financially stable." Despite the financial burden, Sergei felt the car was necessary for their convenience. Life went on. Their daughter Nastya grew into a young woman and attracted the attention of suitors. Tonya kept an eye on Nastya, emphasizing that with boys one should keep one's distance. Tonya's reflection in the mirror revealed signs of aging, which made her reconsider her appearance and lifestyle. Tonya decided to update her image, cut her hair, went on a new diet, after which she became irritable from hunger. Meanwhile, Nastya declared her desire to get a medical education after school, for which she had to leave the city. Despite the fact that Tonya persuaded Nastya to consider an option with a local pedagogical school, Nastya remained adamant in her decision to study away from home. Sergei supported his daughter's ambitions, echoing the independent spirit that Tonya had shown in her youth. Eventually, Nastya left to pursue her dream, leaving Tonya to ponder her own path and the inevitable changes in their family dynamic. All the frustration was now directed at Sergei. Tonya realized that she was having feelings for him for no reason, and that it wasn't going to lead to anything good. But she could not control herself and began to nag her husband on every trifle. He got into hunting and bought an expensive gun, spending all his weekends in the woods. "I'd rather drink," Tonya scolded herself. Her husband questioned, "Maybe it's just an excuse. You were hunting for young beauties." Sergei was so tired that in the end he said, "Live alone, chill out." He slammed the door and left. At that moment, Tonya realized that she had gone too far. Everyone had abandoned her, and she felt despair. But her pride prevented her from asking Sergei to come back. Meanwhile, Sergei's father passed away, leaving his mother alone. So he went to stay with her for a while. At last, the long cold winter came to an end. Buds began to blossom on the trees. Daughter Tonya promised to come home. Since she had left for her studies, she rarely came and only called. She always said she didn't have time because of her studies. Tonya cleaned the apartment to a shine. A neighbor asked, "Are you preparing for a holiday or a wedding?" Tonya defended her daughter. "You can't compare these two concepts. Nastya is still in school, and she doesn't have time for a wedding." The neighbor smirked. "We know how she studies. We were young once too." Tonya herself got married right out of high school. Tonya chased away these negative thoughts about her daughter, but her heart pounded anxiously in her chest, preventing her from sleeping. She had all kinds of dreams and worries. On Sunday morning, the doorbell rang. On the threshold stood Sergei, thin and gaunt, like a beaten dog. It must have been hard for him to live with his mother. Tonya did not ask, because she had her own destiny. She missed him too. Sergei entered the kitchen, and his eyes lit up at the sight of the beautiful table setting. "Have you come to savor?" teased Tonya playfully. "I've missed you. Let's not fight anymore. My daughter is on her way." "I didn't tell her we," began Sergei. "I didn't tell her either," Tonya interjected with a smile. Noticing the dripping faucet, Sergei quickly replaced the gasket and then corrected a shelf that was on the verge of falling over. Tonya said with a satisfied look, "Sit down. Today is a special day." The doorbell rang again, and Tonya's daughter appeared on the doorstep. She looked pale and frail, carrying a bag and a bundle containing a sleeping pink baby. Tonya was stunned, but quickly pulled herself together and accepted the unexpected role of grandmother in her 36 years. Nastya left the baby in the care of her parents and left to take exams, as she had no milk to nurse. Tonya and Sergei took turns caring for their grandson, and Tonya often went out on the street, receiving congratulations from strangers who mistook her for the baby's mother. Tonya wanted to protect her daughter's reputation, so she let people believe she was the mother. As Danya grew older, he affectionately called Tonya Mama and addressed Nastya that way when she came to visit. When Tonya, becoming a young grandmother, began to attract the attention of passers-by, Sergei began to protect her from prying eyes that cast envious glances at her newfound happiness. "Silly, where else will I go? I only need you," Tonya chuckled. Her daughter graduated from college, moved back to town, married, and had a daughter of her own. Their son grew up with Tonya and Sergei as his own. Reflecting on her life, Tonya thought there was nothing particularly remarkable about it. She had never traveled abroad or done anything out of the ordinary. She planned to go to the beach with her granddaughter when she was a little older. Although she and Sergei had disagreements, their bond remained strong and infidelity was out of the question. Now retired and in good health, Tonya was grateful for his benefactions. One day a friend noticed that Tonya looked content. Tonya reflected on this and realized that maybe she really was happy. Difficulties had been encountered along the way, but they had passed. With half her life ahead of her, Tonya was optimistic about her future.